play a video for a couple minutes. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for coming out. I wanted to start with that video as a kind of a pre-thought, or maybe a, what do you call it when people start with a quote? You know, like at the beginning of a thing. One of those. What do you call it? An epigraph? Something like that. It's considered, yes, an attribution. Let's use it as a kind of invocation. I was learning to cut a tree at the same time that I was learning to be skilled. The tree was dying slowly. And at any point, the slowly dying tree could have fallen on someone, death would create death in a way. But because the tree still had life in it, we had to choose whether we should kill the tree, cut the tree because it was dying, or if we should let the tree live. I thought the death of the tree would make a good video work. But people in Minneapolis feel very strongly about their trees, whether they're fully living or partially living. In some ways, maybe the partially living tree is a way of thinking about a particular part of the work that I do, and the hacking constitutes both a labor that in some cases looks like it's creating as much destruction as it is opportunity. Epigraph, attribution, invocation. I'm surrounded by slightly dead things. They're everywhere. And in the hood, people make a lot of money keeping almost dead things alive. We medicate, we prescribe, we measure, we hospitalize, we treat. We treat, we treat, we treat. And we know that every time we treat, it's going to get a little bit worse. And we treat some more. And we increase the dosage. And so part of what I'm trying to do is make some decisions about the space I live in. If the thing can be redeemed, let's fully redeem the thing. Let's not treat it. Like, let's tear it down or fully redeem the thing. And so I've been going through these. I don't even know how to talk about them because I don't think about them as a death necessarily. Like I see that like, oh, when an ash borer beetle has eaten the sap between the bark and the wood, that the wood is still good. It's just that the tree can't grow no more. And so even in its death, this tree has so much to offer. But all my city can imagine with the tree is mulch. The city can only imagine its lowest use because it only wants to care in the simplest ways with the simplest mechanisms possible. It's like if you just slow that treatment down, kind of pull it apart, it's like, oh, there's wood in there. You know, the same wood they use to make baseball bats. Ash, hardwood floors, beautiful furniture grade, hard enough. But if you want to think about a particular kind of systematic dismantling, that St. Lawrence School and St. Lawrence Church both shrank around the same time. And it was like knowledge went away and in a way, God went away. It's like knowledge and God went away and crack came. Like right at the same time that the parishioners no longer came to the church and the parish leader moved off site and the nuns moved out of the house and the archdiocese just started renting the house, that kind of God went away. And at the very moment when folk needed the sap, the nutrient most, that they were kind of cut off from it, that the ash beetle was already eating up everything good that would keep the tree growing. And so the question in Chicago is, what do you do with 90,000 dead-ass trees? And maybe that's a kind of metaphor. And so we've been just trying to find ways to sometimes temporarily activate, to demonstrate what temporary activation could look like. Kind of to imagine a holy living tree, if you will. I'm gonna get off this metaphor in a minute. It's not the best, not the best. But we also decided, you know, when given this task, given this problem, you know, what do we do with 90,000 trees? The answer wasn't, let's make art. It wasn't like, oh, I could make a whale out of the tree. I could make a boat out of the tree. And what the city clearly wanted was a symbolic artistic response to a horribly complicated problem. That is, they wanted me to take 3 or 4 trees, make art, and that everybody would be looking at the art. And then the other 89,997 trees would be mulch. So we built a mill. It took a little time. You know what I mean? We had to get a building and then, you know, get some HVAC and some extra 3-phase power. And then we had some help from this foundation. I don't want to throw no names out because I sometimes mix my words. We had help from a couple of sponsors to buy a mill. The mill is down the street from my studio where I make art. It's down the street from my studio. It has all the same equipment that my studio got. Has a planer, has a router, has the mill. I don't have a mill at my studio. Sanders, you know, racks, dust collection. But the mill and the studio, in a way, they do vastly different things at a kind of granular level, but they're actually after the same thing. Same thing being the gross and total manipulation of form. That form might create poetry. And that if form creates poetry, then poetry might beget form again. And that there could be this conversation between the ephemeral world and a long-lasting world, between the idea of a tree chopping performance and the possibility of a baseball bat or a hardwood floor, that I would evoke a poet when I couldn't afford the mill and then become a mill magnate. That when I started thinking about the material world and poetry, ultimately I know that I'm trying to make space simply so that people can do things, so that I can do things, so that I can do things around people who I want to do other things, so that other people can do things adjacent to me, and that might make me feel good. And that for a long time in the neighborhood that I lived in, the possibility of a great adjacent thing didn't happen because the adjacent space, I didn't own it. I couldn't control it. I had no engagement with the thing that might happen next door. And so what was happening was like anything might happen. I don't really want to talk about space ownership, but I can't talk about the means, in a way. Space as a means to an end, which is sitting yoga, which is a mill that can produce wood that allows other artists to produce things. The creation of a cafe where, as a result of the space existing, one might imagine new social forms happening that couldn't happen because it wasn't there, because the coffee is normally $5, and here you can buy a $1 cup of coffee, and that a $1 cup of coffee allows for other kinds of relationships to develop. Another kind of person can feel present and dignified because they have access to the same thing. We could call a $1 cup of coffee a program or a cup of coffee. You could call it a social intervention, or it's just the right price for people who need space like everybody else to hang. And I don't know if you guys have been like without a responsibility when you're visiting, but you can only drink so much tea. And it's like, I hate those days when I'm in Germany and it's like, I ain't got nothing to do for 2 hours and I've just had 6 cups of tea. And it's like, how many cups of tea do I have to keep sitting at this table? But they keep coming. They keep coming. I don't know what to tell them sometimes. Like my bladder hurts. It's like, you know. And so we started building big space. And in order to do that, it meant that I had to learn some new things. But it's really not unlike, getting an assignment and going to Home Depot and being on the train. And it's like, all right, I got this assignment. I want to make something big. I'm on the train. And you got these restrictions. It's like, all right, it got to be light. I got a belt on. I can wrap it with my belt and kind of put it over my shoulder. Okay, I'm going to be slightly uncomfortable, make somebody uncomfortable in the seat next to me. I can do this. But you get in there and you start to ask questions like, yo, so is this hydrocal, is this plaster, is this drywall mud strong enough to make sculptural objects out of? Can I split your 50-pound bag into 5, 10-pound bags so that me and my homies can carry it out? That I would find myself wanting to solve a very big problem with a limited knowledge. And that over and over, I would just have to ask experts like, okay, so how do I move from the acquisition of a 2-flat to the acquisition of a city-owned 36-unit building? And, and if I want to do this, if I want to convert this abandoned 36-unit into artist live workspace, here's my vision for the thing. I imagine that families, either the parents or their children, are super interested in art, and I want them to live together, and it would be a mixed income. It would be in thirds, like third low income, third affordable, third market rate. how can I do that? And one person says, Theaster, you can't, that's illegal. You can't solicit a low-income person. You got to let everybody know at the same time, and those 13 units that are low income, that's not true. That's not true. Actually, I can have a meeting with artists inclined. I can invite them to a meeting, and I can say, hey, you guys, we got some housing that we're building. And would you like to be a part of an artist initiative? And 200 residents in low-income housing showed up for our meeting and was like, I want to live in that joint. If I got to choose between regular projects and an art project, that's the first time I used that. But what happened was, as a result of these low-income tax credits and the money that the state gave us for doing affordable housing, and this limited number of market rate things, we were able to trick the building out. But we were able to eliminate 2 apartments and create this social space with sprung floors and theater lights. And the kids from the students from the South Shore Fine Arts School, which is right across the street, can now take Zumba and yoga and martial arts, and their African dance classes, and they're like hip hop, after school every day, right? And that the investment of $300,000 or $400,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 within the context of this $15 million project, it was nothing to the project, right? It would have constituted profit, but I was part of the partnership. So anything that would have been profit in this situation would have gone back to the charitable organization. But it required 3.5 years of trying to figure out how to go from a 2-flat deal to a 36-unit deal. And all of that felt like art inquiry. That the thing I was after was not the goal of being a real estate magnate. I was interested in how could I take these same questions that I'm always asking of raw material, introduce a new form, and as a result, question and iterate until I was able to perfect the form for me. And so all of a sudden, it's hard to talk about these projects because I'm talking about like a decade of learning about the built environment and trying to carve out a thing adjacent to sculpture that was like as sculptural but bigger. Like all the same stuff, plus people happen to live there who also felt very strongly about the things I was constructing. I give this example that like if you go out west and you go to the lightning fields, part of the beauty of that kind of moment is that it was intentionally attempting to be away from everything. That its glory is its autonomy, its austerity, its silence, its patience, and that it requires those things of you. Jetty, if you go at the wrong time, you won't see nothing. You go at the right time, you see something. They say you can see it from, I don't know, I ain't never been that far away. I don't know if you can see it from up there. I don't know. But I think that if we were to imagine this as a kind of constitutive land art, like if we would imagine this as land art that has the burden of others, right? That if Terrell can spend $26 million on a crater, then what happens if the funding world can give Donald Judd millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars over 2 or 3 decades what would happen if 30 or 40, 7,500, 200, $500 million landed in the middle of the hood as a work of art? We called it land art. This is a new thing I'm trying to put on. That there's land and there's art. And what I found is that if you build a yoga studio in the middle of the hood, people who live in the hood interested in wellness will come. But then, if you see 65 people doing downward dog, is that a thing? A standing tree? That when you see that, it actually tugs at your desire to be healthy. Like when you just walking down the hood, walking down 70th Street, and you walking past this thing, and it's like a sea of black people with their palms open and their eyes closed. Who wouldn't want to be in that moment? That feels like a plaster cast that things could fit in, and as a result of fitting in, they kind of emulate the cast. That maybe we could do that over and over again. It feels like this chalkboard back here that I want to use so bad. Where it's like by simply making the space, things start to iterate that I have no control over. And that the beauty for me was the construction of the platform. Right? In this case, the platform was formed. And then post-platform, anything could happen. But the problem that black people had on the south side of Chicago and on the west side of Chicago and Akron and Gary is that we no longer know how to construct the platforms. That we always know how to be the thing on the plinth. We always know how to be the person produced. We rarely know how to be the producer. So when I talk to the Chicago Housing Authority, we finish this thing, they say, hey, can we do another 200 units? I say, I'm not a developer. Like, this isn't my bread and butter. I'm trying to prove a point that public housing could be better. And that for the same amount of money that you're spending, you could actually get so much more if somebody was holding your developers accountable. If somebody was willing to be the adjacent organization that was going to make sure that your community space, which is governed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you got to put a community space in. But what that thing purposes to do is really upon the ambition of the developer and the organizations that are willing to help make great things happen in a black space, in this case. And so these spaces, you know, the construction of space, the kind of the commitment to platform making is not because I don't think that I can make good things that hang on walls. It's not about that. Okay. Right. It's just that there are all these things that don't actually need an art marketplace or an art approval that still function as highly important to me. And that what I have to decide is how I spend my time. And I want to spend as much time as I can making platforms. Because if at the end of the day, I have the pleasure of art world dallies and a private yoga instructor in my living room, I'm bored. But if I can go, you know, if I could go see that, I want to see that. You know, these young brothers, they don't know, they don't have this gendered, they don't have this stuff. It's like jump. And they're like, I can jump. They're like leap. It's like, I can leap. You know? And that whether that thing is called a this or a that, or the dance move is a this, that stuff don't matter yet. You know? It's wonderful that Joffrey Ballet has a space where they might teach young black girls and boys how to leap, you know, and it not mess up their ankles, you know. How am I doing? 7:45, 7:45. And so, you know, we make a space, we say we believe in archives, and then we end up with an archive. We make a space, we say we like to, you know, exhibitions, we get a grant for some exhibitions. We make a space, we had these glass lantern slides, and Melon says, hey, maybe we should digitize them. Make a space. We say, oh, this space is for community gatherings, and then people sign up on a schedule, and they want to have their little, you know. And it's not quite build it and they'll come. It's kind of like build it because we need it. Rebuild, because there's been so much dismantling, you know. You know, we built this little kind of, you know, reading space. It was a bookstore. Nobody bought the books, so we call it a reading room, you know. You know. But, you know, we would invite, you know, my guy Hamza Walker would come, and whatever books were around, he would just pick up the book and start talking about it. Hamza can do that. Have you guys, you know Hamza? Oh, man. I have a great Hamza impression, but I won't bore you with it. But he would have these moments where he would just start talking about, you know, he'd look at the publish company and be like, oh, Black Baron. He'd be like, oh, 70s, great. UCLA, those weird artists. Yeah. Paper quality high, they had a little extra money. Content low. That's my Hamza Walker impression. In the basement of Bing, we had these brothers from the West Side doing a documentary on footwork and really trying to have brothers who wouldn't have a space have a space. Yeah. And that the invitation would not just be an invitation to a brother and to sisters and brothers like those brothers. The invitation would be a broad invitation. Right? It would be like the broadest, because the platform was actually interested in amplifying, right? That it was like there was something about the platform that itself should be a resonator of whatever's on the platform. Kind of interested in that. Built this bank. Screen movies there. And it's just like a constant conflation. So the kids, they shouldn't just be in the community space around the corner. They should come to the big house. They should come. The things that they learn over in their practice space, they should be able to like set it out for the mayor, for the ambassador to France, Enchanté. You know, that they should get used to excellent spaces, you know. And for me, the way I know it's formed is because I'm iterating in these spaces. This library was in this space, and this library was also Black Cinema House, and Black Cinema House was producing, we're commissioning projects, screening films, trying to grow curators. And you know, after a year, we don't like each other and they go on and do their thing, but it's cool. You know, it's cool. You know, that, you know, we just bump the books around from house to house, you know, just looking at it and be like, you know, just trying to figure out where they look the best, you know. you know? Y'all know what I mean? I'm really trying to talk simple about a thing, because if you got 35 books on your shelf, you might like where they look today, and you might want to move them. And some people ain't like that. The books are there, they've been organized, alphabetized, and you don't move them. I move my books around. You know, this is like all the people pictures. Black Artist Retreat, this thing we did. Convening artists, you know, getting people excited. And then, you know, when you go to other places, they're like, we love what you do in Chicago, can you do it here? We have 50 people waiting to do what you want them to do. And we have old buildings, very old buildings. Theaster, we have such old buildings. You know, they do. Buildings inside buildings. And, you know, and I said, look, the only way this is going to work is if y'all build it and y'all program it. And y'all got to program it 24 hours a day. I don't know, for 24 days. And everybody, like, man, it would be like these bagpipe cats. And then, you know, it'd be like the saxophone, Belgium saxophone DJ poet. It was awesome, you know? And that there is this way that I'm interested in the question of the sacred. But the question of the sacred seems, for me, directly tied to what the sacred has to offer humans. And how by opening up the possibility of a sacred space, what you're actually talking about is simply the capacity or the ability to make room for others. And I'm interested in participating in shaping those kind of spaces. Thanks very much.